Mao, ça tue, ça blesse, ça flingue. Hey, 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 Mao.
Welcome back to the Bench Mob ENT podcast, the best sports podcast in New Jersey. For those that are with us on YouTube, smash that subscribe button, punch it in the comments. Let us know your takes, how you feel about this episode. If you're listening, leave us a 5-star rating. We're trying to be here for a good time and a long time. If you are watching, you do see that we have a guest on tonight's episode, none other than Chris Gunther from the Chris Gunther Show. He has been doing this sports reporting, sports journalism, host, all those hats he wears. Been doing it for a minute and is really good at it. Chris Gunther, how are you doing?
What's going on, bro? Appreciate you for having me, man. I like that intro. Make me feel special.
I appreciate you hopping on. For me personally, I told my wife about it. I said, yo, I got Chris Gunther hopping on. He's done interviewed everybody from this person, this top tier celebrity, to this top tier athlete. So you have a resume that is definitely something to take notes from. Like, all right, he's been doing this for a while. He's getting some big interviews.
Man, I'm truly grateful. I'm thankful, and I don't take it for granted just because I know how hard it is. But I also don't get comfortable because anytime you get comfortable, that means somebody can take your spot. So that's why I'm always like, all right, I appreciate, the love, and, you guys do an amazing job with the Bench Mob, podcast. You guys continue to grow and thrive. And I'm just in a place in my life, man, where I want to see all of us succeed. I want to see everybody win. It's no fun if only one person can win. I want to see us all succeed and elevate and thrive.
That's a great mindset to have. And like you said, a lot of people don't have that mindset. And we kind of talked about it, alluded to it a little bit before the episode, but that's a whole nother separate episode.
Yeah, they will. They won't get that, at least not on this interview. Now, maybe a little bit later along the lines, but you will not catch it today. So we're going to leave that there.
What first inspired you to pursue a sports media career, and who were some of your earlier influences?
When I was a kid, I loved watching people like Ahmad Rashad and Stuart Scott. And of course, shout out to my mentor, Chris Broussard, the iconic Stephen A, the iconic Rob Parker. I saw all of those guys do what I wanted to do. And as a black kid, particularly growing up in the inner city, whenever you see somebody that looks like you doing something that you think is cool, it makes you say, I can do it too. So seeing those guys and then being able to meet all of them at some point and just to tell them thank you for inspiring me, man. To me, that is like one of the coolest things. So to answer your question directly, when I was a kid, I saw those guys that looked like me, and it made me say I want to do it. The only one I couldn't meet, God rest his soul, was Stuart Scott. And I haven't met Ahmad Rashad yet, but seeing people like Stephen A and Chris Broussard and Rob Parker and other folks such as, Chris Haynes and Kerry Champion, Jamel Hill, Taylor Rooks, Monica McNutt, Kimberly Martin, seeing all of those folks that look like me, it made me say, yo, I can do this too.
Those are all great names that you mentioned right there, and it's very valuable, especially being that, like for me, I'll speak for me, a lot of times what happens in our inner communities, because I can't speak for nowhere else because I'm not of any other community, but we have the mindset of playing the sport as the first thing, and that was my thing. It was like, play the sport, and then later on, I realized, I actually like telling people stories. I like the Stuart Scotts of the world and what he does and bringing excitement to the game from our culture, from our perspective. So those were great names, and I definitely get that because, like, all right, I see it now. It's like possible now, something that I could do, versus the only option was to actually play the sport. When you could still have that love for the sport and still be involved in different ways, which is huge.
It's the greatest sport ever, man, because no matter what, brothers love to hoop. No matter you playing pickup games at the local YMCA or people that played in high school and college, some made it to the pros, playing overseas, etc. It's just one of those sports that brings so many people together. And not throwing shade at anybody else's sport, but there's a reason why the NBA is so big. There's a reason why basketball is so big. And to be completely honest with you, a lot of our, especially in the Black community, a lot of our lifelong relationships have just stemmed from playing basketball.
100%. My wife says it all the time. We out somewhere. How you know this person? 9 times out of 10, it is basketball related.
Plain
We
and
played
simple.
basketball. We watched it. Something along the lines involving basketball. With you being in this industry, and obviously just off the, if y'all haven't caught it, off the first 5 minutes, you love the game of basketball.
Yes, sir.
To cover it though, what were some of your challenges breaking into the industry?
The biggest challenge was somebody giving me a chance. And for years I was trying and nobody would really rock with me. Like, I remember I had one station tell me, because I don't know you, I can't help you. And that was the shortest interview that I had. And, when I was in college, I would cover a little bit, but not as much, because I was doing, gospel radio, and they tried to box me into doing that. So they didn't really want to give me a fair chance, whatever the case is. So fast forward to, I had came back from the Stellar Awards in 2018, and I loved it, but I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. As far as doing gospel, I want to transition to going back to what I know I can do, which is sports. So fast forward to me just jumping out here on faith and saying, I'm just going to start doing things in my community. And, there was a couple basketball teams that already been playing. So I got there at the halfway point of the season. But when you get somewhere at the halfway point, you still have more than enough time to cultivate some relationships, develop things with certain players. And for me, what also happened was, real recognized real. And a few of the players, they didn't really know how to, approach the media yet. So I would just talk to them like a regular person. And then I wasn't that much older than a lot of the guys that were out there. I was only about 6 or 7 years removed. So that, kind of helped them out. And then once they found out who I was, as far as like my background as a player, they were like, oh, shoot. So he actually knows his stuff. And from that point on, it just was about building those relationships and just making sure that I, kept my foot to the pedal to the metal. But the biggest challenge I had was because nobody really wanted to give me a fair chance. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to make every last one of y'all that didn't want to rock with me, you guys are going to know exactly who I am. Years later, that same station knows exactly who I am now.
I've seen it firsthand, man. The sports industry, got the same exact responses, trying to cover college games or the pro level, literally in the most, professional way. Basically, leave us alone. We don't know who you are. We're not going to give you a shot.
Yep. Especially, it's sad, man. It's sad.
For you, experiencing that, like how did you deal with that in regards of keeping your pedal to the metal and not getting into a place of discouragement and thinking, maybe this is not for me?
When I played basketball, I was a pretty good player, but just because I missed one shot, it didn't stop me from shooting. Just because I might have turned the ball over, it didn't stop me from making a good pass. Those are things that I just use. Look here. They said no. All right, try again. They said no. Try again. Just keep going after it. The more that you shoot, you increase your chances of scoring. Now, nobody necessarily in this industry remembers the losses, as far as in our field. Nobody remembers the people that told you no. All they want to know is, can you get that one yes? And once you get that one yes, you just build it up. Build up your yeses. You're going to encounter a little bit more no's, which is fine. But all you need is that one yes. I will use somebody like a LeBron James. I'm from Youngstown. He's from Akron. What this man has been able to accomplish is phenomenal. But one of the things that's always stood out to me is how LeBron has always persevered through the ups, through the downs. He just kept pushing. It makes me shake my head when people don't want to give this man the credit that he deserves and that he has earned. But his mindset is, I'm just going to keep going. And that is what has inspired me. You know, Kobe Bryant was my favorite player. Mamba mentality. You just keep going. Michael Jordan is somebody who I looked up to. Mike didn't care if you liked him. He had an assignment that he wanted to do. And that's just my whole take on it. So I just know, man, I have to keep going. Not just for myself, but for the next generation that's going to be looking up to me. That's going to be looking up to guys like us, because they're going to ask, how did y'all make it happen? Biggest thing we did was we just kept pushing. You know, by the grace of God, I've been in the rooms with some of the biggest names in the world, some of the biggest outlets in the world. And the way I view it is like this. Remember when you played ball and you go to the park or go to a gym and they would have this guy who was supposed to be really good, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. But when we leave here, once we get done, they gonna know who I am too. I just took that same mindset and ran with it. You know, I was covering the WNBA draft back in April, and I'm in there with some of the biggest names in sports as far as the networks are concerned, and, you know, people covering it. But when it was all said and done, every last one of them knew who I was, and that was intentional, because my mindset is simple. I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna work. And when it's all said and done, you're gonna be like, oh shoot, this cat can work too.
That's the perfect and the great mindset to have. And that's one I think the benefits too of, outside of, like you said, you playing, it helps in regards of the players building that trust with you. Like, all right, you've been in the grind, you know what we're going through. You may not have played in the NBA or played overseas, but you know exactly the type of level of work that goes into it. But it also helps, I've said this before, sports in general, but specifically basketball, there are life lessons that you learn from it that you can apply to multiple facets of life outside of playing basketball, because that don't last forever. Bron about to retire at some point.
Just think about it, man. Nobody can play forever. People didn't necessarily want Dr. J to leave, but Dr. J had to retire. Michael Jordan couldn't play forever. Kobe couldn't play forever. LeBron's not going to play forever. Steph's not going to play. Like, eventually that ball is going to stop bouncing. Then you got to ask yourself, well, what else am I going to do? And for me, I always knew I was going to be affiliated with this game some type of way. You know, I stopped playing at a certain level after high school. I could have went to college, but I could have went to college for basketball, but I decided to go in a different route. And, you know, I still would play just to stay in shape, but I knew I wasn't going to the league or anything like that, which was fine. But once I started, you know, doing basketball games, reporting, things like that, it's like you found your niche, and you took everything that you learned from the court, and now you just use it over here in this media space.
That's big facts, and I was able to definitely use that. I've saw in different times with covering Rutgers basketball for the women, so I'm pretty sure you could attest to it too, like, of being in these rooms. I met this guy, OG. He told me, like, similar to what you said, make sure once you in here, when you get that opportunity, you don't fumble it.
Yep.
Ask a good question to make sure that, all right, we're going to have him come back. I've seen some of the bigger names not always be asking the best questions. They just got the name, the cachet, and they got the backing of a big network.
Yeah, I've been in rooms there have been plenty of rooms I've been in with some of the biggest names, and they'll ask something, and I'm just like, all right, that was him. It wasn't me. But hey, you know, they got in the room, and maybe they were just having an off day. But when you're on the grind and you're on the push and you're on the come up, you can't really afford not to be ready. You can't fumble the opportunity. You got to be ready. You know, like when I was at the WNBA draft, when Paige Beckers got drafted, they called my name. I got to ask a good question. And I got to make sure that I ask another good one after that, to the next player, You got to make sure you stay sharp and stay on your skills, because you never know who's going to be sitting in the room that's watching you. And that's why you got to be ready. You know, I'm not saying you're going to be perfect. We all going to, you know, fall short at some point. But, control what you can control.
You run your own show. You're the host, the producer. What's some of those challenges that you have to do as basically being, you're the talent and the person that is orchestrating the show and how it's supposed to go and what's going to be on the rundown? What is some of those challenges that you face, and how is that for you?
The biggest challenge that I faced has been, how am I going to consistently build this thing up? You know, how am I going to consistently outdo myself? One of the things that I picked up on early was, how am I going to be able to get another person to talk to me? And by nature, I'll be 100% honest and transparent. I'm a competitive kind of guy. All right. I don't really like the participation trophies, because this is what I was always taught. You're going to win or you're going to lose. There is really no in between. I would rather win ugly than lose pretty. So therefore, bam. Now, as I'm getting a little older, I'm realizing sometimes you just have to take a pause for a second and just remember where you are and be thankful for the journey, but don't ever get complacent. So as the host, I got to make sure that my questions are good. I got to make sure my content is good. And then as a person that's doing all of this, you know, what most people, once they, you know, see this, or, you know, I've been sharing a few gems on social media lately. When you're a freelancer and you don't have anybody backing you up, yo, this stuff can get real at times. Like, I have literally had people ghost the heck out of me after they just said they could help me do X, Y, and Z. I've had people unfollow me after I politely declined the offer that they had because something in me just says don't do this. Or, you know, I've had several folks say, yeah, man, you on your stuff, I got you. And then all of a sudden they disappear. But that's when you have to stay true to yourself. You got to make sure that you stay in focus. Like, there have been plenty of times I've been invited to a red carpet, and the folks, unfortunately, that invited me mistreated the heck out of me. And then once I go out there and hold them accountable, now all of a sudden they don't want to talk to me. It's like, okay, now I have to prove not only to myself, but prove to y'all, I am not the one to be played with. You know, I'm not your average person. I'm not, you know, just some typical guy that does this. Nah, I got a pretty, by the grace of the good Lord, I got a pretty impressive resume. You know, like how some folks like to say this in basketball, check my stats, check my resume, and check the stuff that I've done. And then you tell me if I am worthy enough to be on this particular red carpet. And if that answer is no, you might be smoking something.
Most definitely. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, for those that's watching, extremely top 5 resume of the people that he has had the pleasure of interviewing, and they're good interviews too. It's
I'm
not
grateful, man.
It's not that he just, you know, is talking and it's nothing put into it, no time put into it. You got to think about that too. When stuff like this continues to happen, obviously you got to be doing something right.
Yes, sir.
To get the names that you're getting in, obviously you have to be doing something right for it to continue to happen. Outside of, obviously, again, the God factor of his grace, his mercy, and his favor.
Yes, sir.
With that, when he gives you that opportunity, though, you still got, hey, Joseph, you still got to be ready when you go see Pharaoh.
You got no choice, man. Faith without works is dead, bro. And too many times we use God as a crutch. Too many times we say, well, yeah, all I got to do is put it in God's hands. Okay, that's great, but you have to do the work. And one of the things that really frustrates me, particularly about us as a people, is we get lazy in the name of God. And that's weird. It's like, no, you still have to do the work. You know, you still have to put the work in with the faith. You know, God can do the super, but we have to do the natural. Like, I can't sit up here and, you know, pray and ask God, can you please help me land a job? And I'm just sitting on social media all day. Or like, I can't sit up here and pray and ask God, yo, can you help me lose weight? And all of a sudden, I'm just eating crazy like there's no tomorrow. Like, no, you got to do the work yourself. God can do what you can't, but what you can do is still put the work in.
It's funny. Somebody just mentioned that at my church about you do the natural so he can put the super on the natural.
Plain and simple, because none of us are the good Lord, okay? God's plans for us, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this not too long ago. You know, the Bible is very real. Contrary to what everyone wants to believe, look here, man. That man, Jesus Christ, is very real. All right, God is 100% real. If you don't believe, that is your property and your problem. But all I'm saying is this, all right? I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling him how, no matter what your intellect thinking is, you can only think on a certain level because you're human. You might think this while God is thinking something totally bigger, but we can't think it at the time because we are human. That's why you got to rely on his knowledge, and you have to rely on him, because if I would have just thought, the stuff I was doing was cool, I would have never got into the rooms with some of the biggest names in the world. And now that I see what it can, what it can become, my focus now is, okay, I know this isn't it. Because if this was it, I would just stop this interview right now and be like, I'm retiring. But that's not going to happen. God is never a God that does less. He always does more and more. And if you think what I'm doing now is big, just wait until you see what God is doing next.
His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways.
All facts, man. Book of Isaiah is real.
And the fact that where he talks about in the Bible, and this wasn't planned for the show, but hey, it is what it is. We here.
Facts.
When he talks about the aspect of doing exceedingly abundantly above all that you could ask or think,
yes, sir.
think we are dreaming big, and God says, that's big for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking more than you can actually comprehend. And to me, that's always a reminder. Is like, you have to, why not try to pursue everything? Why
that's
not
right.
try to, like, hey, my approach, I DM people, athletes, coaches, entertainers, and hey, I'll DM LeBron. Will he
Go
get
after it?
Don't know. But I'm gonna at least shoot the shot. And if God allows it, hey, I'm ready for the opportunity.
You'll miss 100% of the shots you don't shoot.
We sometimes box in God and box ourselves in.
Nah,
and
man.
Miss opportunities.
The way I view it is like this, brother. God gave you a vision. The same God that provides the vision is the same God that will allow you to have the work ethic behind it. Just keep on going. Keep the faith. Keep on going. And if this particular door closes, last time I checked, there's no limit on the good Lord. Can open up crazy amount of doors, man. I am a living witness. One person told me no. Another person that was bigger told me yes. Like, there was a situation recently that I had unfortunately went through, and I was a little discouraged by it. But then I saw the next door open just like that. And I'm like, you know what? That was nobody but God. So I just, wholeheartedly believe, as somebody that is in this space, just to remember who's the one that's really in charge here. Yeah, do your work, do your research, obviously take it one day at a time. But let's not forget, man, at the end of the day, as a believer, you are living your whole life to hear two words at the end. Well done.
Facts. The bigger and the more important picture in all of that, which
yes, sir,
is really all the interviews in the world don't matter if we not making it in. If I never interview anybody after this, but I make it in, I'm good.
That part is like, hey man, if this is where the buck stops, well, it was a good ride. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this recently. I was like, look, man, we live in a generation and we live in a time when everybody thinks that they right. I'll be like, all right, look here. If that's what y'all want to do, that's on y'all. I would rather live my whole life believing in God and get to the end and find out he's not real than to be saying he ain't real my whole life and get to the end and find out he was real this entire time. Hey, with God, it's a win-win situation. One demon don't stop the show,
Facts.
baby.
Most definitely. For you, something you mentioned earlier that I want to touch on, in regards of making sure that you ask a good question, right? For you, maybe from mentors and just being in the game for a while, what constitutes a good question in your eyes?
One that would, as soon as you ask it, they pause and say, that was a good question. That right there is what we live for. Because once they go like that, you like, I got you. That's what I work hard for. And also, I view a good question as, do you know the person? Do you know the game? Were you watching the game? Did you really immerse yourself in it? And then ask an honest question about what you saw out there, and make sure that it is something professional and it's a fair question. Now, sometimes they might not want to give you a fair answer. All right, but you still have a job to do. You ask the right one and then just keep it pushing. But whenever they say that was a good question, bam, there you go. That's when you know you got it.
Yeah, that's always one of the great things to hear for sure.
I
You
love it.
also wear the hat. You also wear the hat of being a sideline interviewer. You have that a part of your resume. Those is different from these type of settings. You only got a certain amount of time. How
Yes,
do you
sir.
make that feel authentic in a condensed amount of time?
I got to remember that I was a player once too. So that right there taught me you got to be quick on your feet. And once you have been watching the game, you've been taking your notes, you're mentally thinking, okay, I'm going to ask them about this. Like, free game right here. If somebody hits a game winner and they're telling me, all right, you're going to talk to the person that just hit the game winner, one of the best things you can ask him is, hey, can you take me through that play? Is that what the coach drew up? Is that what y'all said? Forget the playbook, just give me the ball, get the heck out the way. If, someone goes berserk in the fourth quarter, ask something along the lines of, tonight you had 20 in the fourth, what got into you? Or, something along that, caliber, because you want to make sure that it's relevant. And after you get done, you go back and watch it. If you like what you saw on tape, you're like, I'm going to keep this thing going. One of the things that helped me out is watching other great people, watching other folks like Taylor Rooks, Chris Haynes, Jared Greenberg, and just learning from it. Lisa Salters and Doris Burke, the folks that have really paved the way. Even when, my man Chris Broussard was doing sideline, I would watch him. And my thing was, I would kind of just close my eyes and say, that's going to be me soon. And I just wanted to keep going from there. And the players appreciate when you ask them a good question, especially right after a game.
That's the important part that I try to be mindful of, that you have to actually be immersed in paying attention to it. And just like on the basketball court, like you said, you got to study the great study. All right, this is how he acts. This is how he set it up. Like, one of the ones that I love to actually really just like study is Taylor Rooks. I think it's a disservice that people mention, oh, she's able to get these players to say these crazy things because of her looks. Nah, there's a way that she's setting these questions up to make them feel comfortable. That now they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to win 10 titles before 26. No, it's an art to how she was able to do that, to get them to respond that way. So definitely something that's very vital and important. And shout out to Chris Broussard too, because I remember I met him when I was like,
one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Oh, for sure.
The nicest people.
Freshman in high school, he came to a basketball tournament that was in Jersey and pulled up. Real down to earth, real cool. Shout out to Chris Broussard.
Love that guy, man. He's one of the nicest people and one of the greatest men that I know. Like, outside of him doing sports and television, he's genuinely a good guy. That's somebody that I look up to, and obviously I don't talk to him every single day, but I always let him know, yo, man, I'm gonna do what you're doing one day. And I just let him know, like, I'm gonna send the elevator down the same way that y'all done for me. I know I still have work to do, but something in me is never gonna let this go. And I want him to be somebody that, looks back over when I make it to another level. I want him to say, yeah, Chris told me he was gonna do that. And bam. So yeah, he's definitely somebody who I look up to a whole lot. Rob Parker is another person who's become a really great mentor of mine, super nice guy. And of course, my man Stephen A. That's my guy, my man 50 Grand. Got a lot of love for him and the people who I look up to that look like me. Chris Haynes, every time I'm around him, he showed me nothing but love. And Monica McNutt is another person who's always been really kind and really supportive. When people are at the biggest level in the world, but they still are accessible and very down to earth people, it makes the game so much better. Because some folks in this industry can be real jerks. I ain't gonna say no names, but let's just say some of y'all really need to get your priorities straight.
Most definitely. I love the people that no matter how big they get, they can still have that human interaction, and remembering that at the end of the day, your bank account may be bigger or you might be on a bigger platform, but we still humans.
That
We
part,
are.
and that is why I'm a firm believer. Yo, man, just treat people the right way. Everybody's not gonna be your friend. It's okay. It's life. Okay. Everybody didn't like Jesus, but he turned out to be perfectly fine. So just keep your heart right, keep God first, and just keep working. Don't pay attention to anything that doesn't serve you purpose. If somebody don't rock with you, it's their loss, not yours.
Facts. Do you prefer interviewing a basketball player, collegiate level, NBA, high school, after a big win or after a tough loss?
I would rather talk to them after a win because their spirits are higher. They're a little bit more energetic. They want to talk once they win. Nobody really wants to talk after a loss, but it does come with the territory. But even when somebody loses, you got to try to find the positives. Try to find something that makes them look forward to talking to you again. But to answer your question directly, I would much rather talk to somebody after they won because the answers they give me are so much better.
Most definitely. You have, and I'm sure you could attest to it, it's a handful of players that's going to give you a good answer regardless, win or loss. And those are, the rarefied airs when it comes to answering questions after the game, win or loss. They're going to give you, hey, this is what I saw. We got to do better. This is how I felt after the game winner. Like, they're even kill. They give you the same energy regardless. Side question, right? When you have to interview after a tough loss, or the teams that continue to lose, how do you create questions in that space? Because it's like, all right, I keep losing. Do we keep talking about, hey, what happened tonight? How did y'all lose again tonight? How do you craft questions in those situations covering a team or a player that isn't actually, they're in a slump?
You try to find a positive in it. Say for instance, you went on a run, but you still lost. What was it about the run that impressed you? Or say for instance, a player is coming down and they made a really great pass. What was it about that particular play that made you want to make that pass? How was the defense playing you that made you say, okay, let me try to get this guy going? There's always a way that you can spin it. You just have to make sure that it's relevant and make sure that it's positive. For example, there have been plenty of times when guys were not really shooting the ball efficiently, but I got to talk to the coach going into the half and ask them, hey, coach, what was it about the half that impressed you the most? Or, you guys were able to cut the lead to about 6. How were you able to do that? Find something that's positive. Once you find that, it really becomes second nature.
That's a great point right there. Our last question before we transition to our fourth quarter segment. What advice would you give to young creators trying to break into the sports media space?
Know what you want to do. I also would tell them take advantage of your resources. Network, build those relationships. And last but not least, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk to people. Work hard, be kind. Yeah, be relentless when you're going after something. But if it doesn't happen for you right then and there, congratulate the next person. Be friendly. Sometimes y'all even become friends. Don't be a jerk to folks, man. Because people they will remember you. Treat everybody in that room with respect. Because you never know. That person who looks like a random guy could be a network executive that can remember how you talk to them. And they're going to say, hey, give me a call. I got this project. I think you'll be great for it. Or, hey, I represent such and such. I want to set something up for you guys. You just never really know. So to the young ones on the come up, or even those that are a little bit concerned if they should do it. Go for it. If this is what you really want to do, go for it. Don't let the no's make you stop. I've been told no several times. Heck, I still get told no, but I keep pushing. And, you know, by the grace of God, I've been in a position now where I can keep going. It's not easy at all, but my goodness, you know, what if I were to quit right now and I had a whole second half of my life to live? What if I just gave up at 30? And I'm still pretty young. I still got plenty of, you know what I'm saying, time. But at this age, you know what works and what doesn't work. But one of the things I would encourage the, you know, young people to do is flat out go after it. Go after what you want. Keep God first. Block out the naysayers. You know, enjoy this journey because it's a beautiful journey if you do it the right way.
1000%. Again, we appreciate Chris Gunther hopping on the Bench Mob ENT podcast, taking time out your schedule. Fourth quarter segment.
Yes, sir.
Best food city you've been to for work.
You know what? Chicago was pretty good. I remember Chicago was pretty good. Detroit showed me a lot of love. Food places was amazing as well. I want to say Vegas, but Vegas is like a bunch of chain spots that you can kind of get anywhere. But Chicago and Detroit was pretty dope, if I do say so myself. And you know what? There was this one spot, I forgot where I was at in Wilmington, Delaware. It was some really cool restaurant. I was there covering HBCU week a year ago, and all the media, we all went out to dinner, and it was really good. Like, it was really, really good. I forgot the name of the restaurant, but yeah, that place was dope, man. So yeah, it would probably have to. It's a toss-up out of Chicago, Detroit, and Delaware.
Okay, definitely Delaware's up my alley. So if you think of the spot, let me know that.
I wish I could, but man,
that's a little dry for me. Chicago, that's a flight. Delaware, we can make that work. Chicago,
yes, sir.
Most definitely. So I had this question on here, but based off this episode, I think we know the answer that you would rather host the NBA Finals.
Yeah, man, the finals is my heart right there. Don't get me wrong. If the Super Bowl call, I ain't no fool now. I'm gonna catch that flight and get out there and cover the Super Bowl. Let's not be idiots, okay? Let's not be dumb here. But if you know your boy is invited to the finals, I'm not gonna say no. The thing is, I can do both because you know on the schedules they don't conflict at all. One of them is in January, February. The other one is in May and June. So, I mean, you can really make both. But if I had to choose one or the other, it's whichever one calls me first. There we go.
So, what I want to ask instead, though, if you had to choose off your memory an NBA Finals to cover, which one would you have chose?
Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals, Lakers and Celtics. That would have been, yes, sir. I'm a huge Laker fan. Kobe, God rest his soul, was my favorite player. I was a huge fan of Ron Artest because of his defense, who is meta world peace now. Shout out to him. I've interviewed him a few times. Really nice guy. And yeah, man, that would have been incredible to be there just because of the storylines, man. Kobe with a broke finger, and this was him really going after ring number 5. You got the 4-headed monster in Boston with Rondo, with Pierce, with Allen, and Kevin Garnett. And they were up by double digits going into the 4th. And Ron Artest and Kobe, they just found a way to get it done. Kobe didn't even have a good shoot night, and the man still went out and got you 24 and 12. And then, of course, you know, Kobe at the top of the key throws it to Ron Artest, catches it, jab steps, knocks down the 3, blows kisses. And, you know, it's just one of those games where I would have loved to have been there.
Lakers fan here from birth as well.
Yes, sir.
Very, very, very good time seeing my boys afterwards and talking about stuff.
Oh, I loved every minute of it because they couldn't say anything to me. And it's been so like heartbreaking when I look online and see some of these people try to display Kobe's legacy, forgetting that none of y'all was saying this when the man was here. And there have been plenty of folks that have tried to say Kobe ain't even top 5. I'm like, okay, what weed are you smoking? Because whatever it is, you need to get off of it immediately. All right. There is not one list that I can respect. If you ain't got these three guys in it, Kobe, LeBron, and Michael, if you ain't got them in your top three, it's just hard for me to listen to it. Because the players that played against all three of them said those are the three greatest that they've ever seen. Like, with all due respect to some of the pioneers in the OGs of the game, that man from Akron and that man from Wilmington, North Carolina, and that man from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, they was some different breeds. Now, I'm just being honest with you.
Jason Tatum said the same thing, I think, yesterday. If those three aren't in your top five, I don't want to really have a discussion with you. So.
I don't, and you can rate them wherever you want, put them wherever you want, but they just got to be there.
Favorite moment or experience being a part of NABJ, for those that do not know, that is for Black journalists across the nation. Favorite moment being a part of that.
My favorite moment was literally being a part of it, man. I know that sounds cliche, but when you step into a room and you look around and everybody there is after the same goal, connecting. Not only are they trying to connect, but they want to see you succeed, and they want to make sure that you get to your next level. And there's no gatekeeping in sight. Man, to be in that room with all those people that have really become friends out of nowhere, folks I still try to talk to, and just build up those relationships and build that rapport with, to see all of them continue to grow and to thrive, and to have been there and met with some of the biggest networks in the world, because they were having on-site interviews and trying to fill people out right then and there. You don't get that from just a typical thing. And shout out to, matter of fact, I'll tell you a story I haven't really talked about a whole lot. So my man Rob Parker called me. Chrissy, you got to be there, baby. Come on, I need to see you there. Everybody who you're gonna want to meet, they're right there for you, baby. You got to be there. All right, I'm not gonna have this conversation twice. I was like, I'll be right there. And man, I feel like I needed that extra fire, because there was a few things going on in my personal life at the time that were trying to stop me from going. But Rob Parker told me something. He said, hey man, you're gonna have to make some sacrifices at some point. And that right there was something that, even though I already knew, I'm glad that I was reminded of it. And that is where a great mentor comes in at, because they're going to tell you some stuff that you need to hear. So I'm glad that I was able to go up to NABJ, and shout out to all the folks I connected with, met so many amazing people. Just, it really made me realize that I can really do this thing. All it takes is one. For example, Michael Jordan only needed to hit one shot to be considered clutch. You know what that shot was? When he was in the NCAA championship and they won the title. All Michael needed was that one shot, though, and that took his confidence to a whole nother level. So in this business, or in this life thing, period, all you need is that one solid opportunity. And once you get it, it's going to go up from there, man. And I'm grateful to have really been able to go. The people that I connected with, the folks that I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do next. I loved NABJ. It was one of the best things that I have experienced.
Now, you've interviewed, I don't know many names that we can say that you haven't interviewed. The Ice Cubes of the world, the Mike Epps of the world, Monique, all of the athletes that you could possibly think of, right?
Love Mike too. That was my guy. Yes, sir.
For you, if you had to somehow, I know this is, with your resume, it's a little tough, but if you had to choose a Mount Rushmore of people you've interviewed, who would be on it?
That is a great question. I love that question. I really do. So the reason why it's so tough for me to answer it, though, is because by the grace of God, it's been so many. And in sports, I could just name my four and bam, that's it. But then in entertainment, I got a whole other side. So it's like, dang. But I know y'all gonna need me to answer this, so I'm gonna try to give it my best. I mean, you got Stephen A. That's a given. My man Ice Cube, that's a given. Just hilarious, and Desi, they have always shown me so much love. So they're a combo though. Like I can't just put one and not put the other. So that's gonna be like 3A, 3B. And then that last one, yeah, man, that's a tough one for me because a lot of these folks I got a chance to chop it up with multiple times, like Auntie Monique. That's become a legit auntie to me, man. You know what I'm saying? So love her. And then you got somebody like Tommy Davidson who showed me crazy love. I mean, so that one is always a challenge. But yeah, if I could just answer it slightly, you know what, I'm gonna add, man, it's a challenge just because it's been so many of them. But you know, if I had to give you like my five just off the top of the dome, it would be Stephen A, Q, you got Jess and Desi, you got Tommy, you got Monique, man, and by the grace of God, I've had so many of them, you know, and I can't wait to see what happens next because I'm gonna come back and give you my part two of my Mount Rushmore. I'm gonna be better prepared, dagnabbit.
For sure. So last question before we get you out of here, right?
Yes, sir.
If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would Chris Gunther be doing?
Well, let's see. If I wasn't doing interviews and wasn't traveling all over the country, wasn't covering sports and in-game hosting, I think I would just be, I can't say I would be an average guy because there's nothing about me that's average. You know, like I grew up in church my whole life, so I'm pretty sure I would be doing things around the church affiliated because at the end of the day, like we were talking about before, you know, fools tried to come in and break this connection up. You know, at the end of the day, I'm living my whole life to hear two words, well done. So I do know it would be something with the church related period. But I love what I'm doing, man. I love what I'm doing. I'm having so much fun doing it. And, you know, I don't want the good Lord to call me home just yet. I still got stuff to do. I got contracts to sign. I got, you know, autographs to sign. I got people to inspire. You know, I got other podcasts to do. And I'm just so grateful, man. God has blessed me to do so much. You know, have a lovely wife who has believed in me since day one, you know, because we know this as married men. We can't do nothing unless we got them.
Oh, sure.
We can't. The little stuff that we don't think about, they think about, and they make it so much better. Like, don't get me wrong. God was smart for making Adam, but he improved when he made Eve. Plain and simple, man. You know, and to any of my young men listening to this, favor is connected to your wife, not your girlfriend. Scripture said that he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So fellas, get you a wife, not a side piece, not somebody that you occasionally would. Nah, get you a wife and get you a good one. If you got a good one, you will be blessed. There's a reason why every interview I do, I got my ring on, and you can see, or like you might be able to see the wedding picture behind me, is because look here, brother, you gotta remember who's there with you when you ain't got nothing. Plain and simple. So yeah, to my young fellas, get you a wife, and if you're a black man, get your black woman. Praise God.
Well, sure. That's a wrap on this episode right here of the BME Podcast. Y'all know the vibes here, though. If you stay ready, you don't gotta get ready. Bench Mob, we out. Peace.
Peace and love, y'all.